Do you find it easier to forgive a friend for a major betrayal than to forgive yourself for sending a text with a typo? Have you ever navigated a life-shattering crisis with chilling calm, only to find yourself completely paralyzed by a restaurant menu an hour later? If you recognize that feeling, you know the quiet confusion of a mind that seems to operate by a different set of rules. You might have been told you're overthinking it, or that you lack self-compassion. But what if I told you that isn't a character flaw? What if it's not a lack of self-worth, but a highly sophisticated threat detection system that has been turned inward? This system was meticulously trained by your past to keep you safe. And now it's running on a continuous loop, scanning for dangers that may no longer be present. You feel everything so deeply because your nervous system learned that missing a single cue could be catastrophic. You are hard on yourself for small mistakes because you learned that any imperfection could attract unwanted attention. The logic is flawless, even if the outcome is exhausting. For years, you may have felt that you were wired differently, maybe even broken. Today, we're going to explore why that feeling is not only normal, but a testament to your strength. We will decode the hidden logic behind the psychology of people who have endured too much. And we'll discover that what you thought were scars are actually the blueprints of your survival. When you've been through significant hardship, your mind doesn't just recover, it rebuilds. It creates new pathways, new rules, and new defense systems designed to ensure you never have to go through that kind of pain again. These are not your flaws. They are the architecture of your survival. Each confusing behavior, each paradoxical reaction, is a skill that you unconsciously developed to navigate a world that felt unsafe. In this video, we're going to unpack 4 of the most common and confusing of these adaptations. First, we'll explore hyper-independence, that fierce need to do everything yourself. Then, we will dive into the chameleon effect, the feeling of becoming whoever you need to be to keep the peace. After that, we'll tackle the frustrating paradox of analysis paralysis over small decisions. And finally, we will uncover why you might have a deep aversion to compliments and praise. But this video is not just about understanding the why. It's also about empowering you with the what now. So stick around, because at the end, I'm going to share a simple 3-step tool you can start using today to process these feelings with compassion. This isn't about erasing your past or changing who you are. It's about learning the language of your own survival story. Let's begin with the first sign, one that often masquerades as strength: hyper-independence. This is the fierce, almost compulsive need to be completely self-reliant. You're the person who will struggle to carry all 10 grocery bags in one trip rather than ask for help. You'll spend hours on the internet trying to fix a leaky faucet instead of just calling a plumber. On the surface, it looks like incredible competence and strength. But if you look closer, underneath that competence, there is often a deep, quiet fear. It's not that you don't want help. It's that your past has taught you, perhaps through painful experience, that relying on others is a profound risk. Maybe people weren't there for you when you needed them most. Maybe your requests for help were ignored, met with resentment, or even used against you. So your brilliant, protective mind came up with a bulletproof strategy. If I never need anyone, I can never be let down. Hyper-independence isn't a rejection of other people. It's a defense mechanism against disappointment. Imagine you're trying to move a heavy piece of furniture by yourself. A friend is just down the hall, and a quiet part of you feels the urge to request their assistance. But an older, more powerful part of your brain quickly does the calculus of risk. What if they say no? What if they say yes, but with a sigh that makes you feel like a burden? What if they help, but then hold it over you later? Suddenly, the potential emotional cost of asking for help feels far heavier than the furniture. So you push and you grunt and you scrape the floor, doing it all yourself. It's not about pride. It's about emotional risk management. You haven't lost your ability to trust others. You've just perfected the art of trusting yourself above all else. It's a lonely strategy, but it has one undeniable benefit. You are always there for you. You learned to be the person you always needed. And this impulse to control your own world is deeply connected to why you also struggle to accept things from the outside, like praise, which we'll explore in just a few moments. This intense self-reliance makes perfect sense. This goes even deeper when we look at how you interact with others. The next trait isn't about what you do, but about who you become. This brings us to our second trait, the chameleon effect. The chameleon effect is the tendency to unconsciously mirror the personalities, moods, and even mannerisms of the people around you. You might notice your accent shifting slightly to match a new friend, or your sense of humor changing depending on the room you're in. With your serious work colleagues, you are the epitome of professionalism. With your wild, creative friends, you are the life of the party. After a while, you might look in the mirror and wonder which one of these is the real me. Now, the immediate fear is that you are being fake or inauthentic. But again, we have to look at the brilliant survival logic behind this adaptation. You're not being fake. You became an expert at predicting what others needed you to be in order to keep things stable. For someone who has endured too much, the ability to de-escalate potential conflict before it even begins is a superpower. You learn to read a room with the precision of a seismograph detecting tremors. You became a master of social harmony because you learned that discord could be dangerous. The problem is that this constant performance is exhausting. You come home from a social gathering and you don't feel energized, you feel completely drained, like an actor walking off stage after a 3-hour play. You spent the entire night translating, monitoring, and adapting. This isn't a sign that you're an introvert who needs to be alone. It's a sign that your nervous system was working overtime on a job it was trained to do perfectly, keeping you safe by ensuring everyone else was comfortable. You didn't lose yourself. You became a mirror, a skill you learned to show people what they needed to see to keep the peace. The grief you might feel is for the self that didn't have to learn this skill. And that grief is valid. The exhaustion is real. You're not imagining it. You simply became a master of emotional camouflage. It kept you hidden and safe when you needed it most. It's an art form born of necessity. Does that feeling of social exhaustion sound familiar? It's a sign of how hard your nervous system is working to protect you, which is a logic that extends to our next paradoxical trait. The third trait is one of the most frustrating and confusing for people who have endured too much: analysis paralysis on small decisions. This is the person who can decide to change careers, move across the country, or end a long-term relationship in a single, decisive moment. Your mind is clear, your resolve is firm, and you execute the plan flawlessly. But then that same person stands in the cereal aisle of the grocery store for 10 minutes completely frozen. Or you spend 30 minutes scrolling through Netflix, unable to commit to a movie, until you just give up and go to bed. This isn't you being indecisive. This is a feature, not a bug, of a brain that has been calibrated for a different level of threat. Psychologists believe that when you experience chronic stress or trauma, your decision-making system gets optimized for high-stakes crisis situations. Your brain becomes a fighter jet designed for high-speed dogfights and complex tactical maneuvers. In a crisis, all the non-essential systems shut down, and you have one clear objective: survive. This is why you are so good in an emergency. But when the crisis is over and you're faced with a low-stakes decision, that fighter jet is being asked to do the job of a family minivan. It's not built for picking a parking spot or choosing between oatmeal and eggs. The low stakes don't trigger your crisis mode decisiveness, so your brain just stalls, overwhelmed by options that don't matter. There's also another layer to this. When you've been through too much, you may have learned that even small choices can have disproportionately large consequences. Choosing the wrong thing to say or the wrong place to be might have led to negative outcomes in the past. So now, even a decision about a movie feels like it has a right and a wrong answer, and the fear of getting it wrong is paralyzing. Your brain isn't broken. It's a grand strategist trained for high-stakes campaigns. It gets confused when asked to plan a minor skirmish over what to eat for dinner. So the next time you're frozen by a trivial choice, give yourself some grace. You're not indecisive, you're just a highly trained weapons system that's currently off duty. It makes perfect sense that your system doesn't know what to do with peacetime. This brings us to our fourth and final trait, which is perhaps the most subtle: a deep aversion to compliments and positive feedback. Someone tells you, "You did an amazing job on that project," and everything inside you wants to deflect it. You might say, "Oh, it was nothing," or "Anyone could have done it," or you immediately point out a tiny flaw that nobody else noticed. It feels physically uncomfortable to just say thank you and let the compliment land. The common assumption is that this is just humility or low self-esteem. But for someone who has endured too much, the psychology is far more complex and, again, based in survival. First, a compliment can feel dissonant. If you have a deeply ingrained internal narrative of being not good enough that was written by past trauma, then a piece of positive feedback doesn't compute. It's like trying to run Windows software on a Mac. The system just rejects it because it doesn't match the operating code. Second, and more importantly, a compliment can feel unsafe. In your experience, was praise ever followed by a request? Was "you're so good at this" just the prelude to "so could you do this extra work for me"? Was praise a form of grooming where kindness was just the first step in a trap? Your brain learned to see an unexpected compliment not as a gift, but as the first move in a chess game you didn't want to play. Deflecting the compliment is a way of saying, "I'm not playing." Third, a compliment creates an expectation. If you accept the praise, you are now the person who is good at that thing, and you feel a pressure to maintain that standard. This connects directly back to that hyper-independence we talked about. Accepting praise feels like taking on a debt, and a hyper-independent person wants to owe nothing to anyone. So it's not just shyness? To a survivor, unexpected praise can sound like a debt you didn't agree to take on. It's a survival mechanism to keep your social ledger clean and to avoid the pressure of future expectations. It is a brilliant, if unconscious, strategy for staying free and unburdened. If these traits are resonating with you and you want to continue this journey of understanding yourself, consider subscribing. We explore this kind of psychology every week because self-awareness is the first step to self-compassion. So now that we've explored the why behind these powerful adaptations, let's shift to the how. how can we begin to work with these parts of ourselves, not to erase them, but to integrate them with more gentleness and choice? Acknowledge, attribute, and act. Acknowledged. This is simply the act of noticing the behavior or feeling as it happens, without judgment. Instead of mindlessly deflecting a compliment, you just notice, there it is. I'm feeling the urge to downplay my success. You're not fighting it, you're just shining a gentle light on it. Second, attribute. This is where you connect the behavior to its survival root, using the knowledge we've discussed today. I'm doing this not because I have low self-esteem, but because my system learned that praise can be a trap. This feeling is an echo of an old survival strategy. This step is crucial because it replaces self-criticism with self-understanding. Third, and this is the most important part, act. This doesn't mean making a huge, drastic change. It means choosing a small, different action, even if it's just an internal one. After you've acknowledged and attributed the feeling, you can make a conscious choice. Maybe you still deflect the compliment, but this time you do it consciously, and afterward you say thank you to yourself internally. Or maybe, just maybe, you take a deep breath and say, "Thank you, I appreciate that," even if it feels uncomfortable. The point isn't success or failure. The point is introducing choice where there was once only automatic reaction. Acknowledge, attribute, act. It's a way to gently take the steering wheel back from your autopilot. So what do hyperindependence, social chameleons, analysis paralysis, and hating compliments all have in common? They are all masterpieces of survival. They are the intricate, intelligent systems your mind built to protect you when no one else could. These aren't cracks in your foundation. They are the intricate carvings on the armor you forged in a fire that most people will never have to feel. Now, it's important to acknowledge that these patterns can look different for everyone. For a first responder, these adaptations might manifest as emotional numbness and a dark sense of humor. For someone who grew up in a chaotic home, it might look more like people-pleasing and hypervigilance. The context matters, but the underlying principle is the same. The mind adapts to survive. In the world of psychology, many of these patterns are recognized as features of what is known as complex PTSD or c-ptsd. This arises from prolonged, repeated exposure to stressful or traumatic events. But you don't need a diagnosis to validate your experience. If you recognize yourself in these traits, that is enough. So now, when you find yourself paralyzed by a menu, you can understand it's the echo of your inner strategist. Your journey is not about destroying that armor. It's about learning when you are safe enough to take it off. If this video was helpful, please consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear this message too. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone is the language to understand themselves. And in the comments, I'd love to know which of these 4 traits resonated most deeply with you. Reading each other's experiences is a powerful reminder that you are not alone. Thank you for taking the time to understand yourself a little better today. Be gentle with yourself.